I had lived in Georgia for my entire life, surrounded by my parents and the familiar streets where I had grown up. Our house had been a place of comfort, filled with memories that spanned over the years. My father worked for a large company, and although he had always been content with his job, things took an unexpected turn one Friday evening during dinner. We were gathered around the table, enjoying a quiet meal, when he dropped the bombshell. "My company offered me a great opportunity," he said, his voice steady, but with a hint of excitement. "They want me to take on a managerial role in Florida, in a place called Tampa. If I accept, we'd be moving there as a family. The company is even offering to pay for the move and help us find a new house." Mom and I were both taken aback. Florida? It seemed so far away, so different. Dad continued, explaining that it was a big decision, but he felt it might be a fresh start for us, especially since we hadn't taken a family vacation in ages. Tampa sounded like an ideal place for a change of scenery, with its beaches and warm weather. After a long pause, Mom and I exchanged a glance and nodded in agreement. We decided it was worth considering. "How much time do you have to decide?" Mom asked, breaking the silence. Dad glanced at his watch, looking thoughtful. "They've given me 2 weeks," he said. "But if we agree, they'll give us as much time as we need to settle into a new home." That evening, after some discussion, we agreed to start planning for a move. It wasn't going to be easy, but it felt like the right decision at the time. Over the next few weeks, Dad became more and more invested in the idea of moving, and we all began to realize that it wasn't just about the job. It was about the new chapter in our lives. A couple of days later, Mom and Dad booked a trip to Tampa to start house hunting. They spent weekends there, returning on Mondays with updates about the properties they had visited. I stayed behind, going to school and trying to absorb everything happening around me. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity, they found the perfect house. I was invited to come along for a second look to see what I thought. It had everything we needed: 4 bedrooms, a spacious living area, a double garage, and a backyard that was just big enough for us to enjoy. It wasn't the biggest house, but it felt like a perfect fit. The inside was modern and well kept, with a large kitchen that instantly caught Mom's attention. She was an amazing cook, and the thought of having more space to prepare her incredible meals made her very excited. I couldn't deny that the house had potential. After a bit of negotiation, Dad made the purchase. Once the house was secured, things started moving quickly. We had to sell our old house, which was bittersweet. It held years of memories, and the thought of leaving it behind made me feel strange. But life was pushing us forward. We went through everything we owned, tossing out old junk and donating anything we didn't need. It was harder than I expected to part with some things, but we were determined not to burden the new house with unnecessary stuff. When it came to packing, Dad was ruthless, much to my surprise. He got rid of 10 boxes of things, while Mom only had 3. As for me, I ended up with 15 boxes, much of it things I hadn't even looked at in years. The hardest part was letting go of my old childhood toys and trinkets, but in the end, I knew it was time to move on. We sold the house in record time, and within 6 weeks, we found ourselves in Tampa, surrounded by boxes and takeout food. We didn't have time to cook yet, so we lived on frozen dinners and fast food. It wasn't glamorous, but it was part of the process. Slowly, we began unpacking and setting up our new home. During this transition, I found a job working remotely, which was a relief. The flexibility of working from home suited me much better than my old office job back in Georgia. I could take breaks, enjoy the hot tub in the backyard, and even get some swimming in during the day. It felt like a luxury, and I soon grew accustomed to the pace of life in Florida. Our new neighborhood had 2 houses nearby. One was empty, with a for sale sign out front. The other was lived in, but the owner, a man in his late 40s or early 50s, never really interacted with us. I'd seen him drive in and out of the driveway a few times, but he never waved back when I tried to greet him. I thought it was odd, but Mom assured me that some people were just strange, and it was best to leave them to their own devices. But things started to feel a little off. Late at night, I would sometimes see a flashlight in the backyard of the house next door. It would move slowly across the yard, and I would watch curiously from my bedroom window. Then, on a couple of occasions, the light would stop moving, and suddenly it would shine right at my window. I quickly ducked down, holding my breath, and wondered how the man knew I was watching. But when I looked again, the light had disappeared, and there was no sign of him. Over time, I noticed even more strange things. The man didn't seem to go out during the day. I never saw him in the garden, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I told Mom about it, but she brushed it off, telling me not to worry and to focus on my own life. Then one afternoon, I was relaxing in the hot tub, gazing up at the clear blue sky. As I leaned back, I saw something moving along the fence next to the neighbor's yard. I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It was a ladder leaning against the fence. At the top of the ladder stood the man, wearing a gas mask, peering over the fence and staring right at me. His eyes were obscured by the mask, but the way he was looking at me sent a chill down my spine. I froze, unsure of what to do. The man didn't speak, but he seemed to be studying me intently. Then, to my horror, he reached down and pulled a black cat from behind the fence. The cat was limp, either dead or unconscious. He held the cat in his hands for a moment, then pointed at me with his other hand and made a cutting motion across his throat. It was an unmistakable threat. Without a word, he climbed down from the ladder, took the ladder with him, and disappeared into his yard. My heart raced as I stood there, stunned. What was he doing? Why was he threatening me? And why was he holding a dead cat? I couldn't just ignore it. I needed to know what was going on, so I decided to do some investigating. I waited until dark, when both Mom and Dad were out for the weekend. Alone in the house, I grabbed a small flashlight and headed toward the fence that separated our yard from the neighbor's. One of the fence panels was loose, something Dad had planned to fix. I slid through the gap and found myself in the man's backyard. It was eerily quiet, and the ground beneath my feet seemed soft and unsettled, as if something had been recently buried. As I moved closer to the shed at the back of his yard, I noticed a series of fresh mounds scattered around. My flashlight flickered as I crept forward, and soon I reached the door of the shed. It was unlocked, so I cautiously turned the handle and stepped inside. What I saw made my stomach turn. The shed was dark, musty, and reeked of something foul. On a large butcher's table in the center of the room was a wooden board covered in fresh blood. Bloodstains were splattered on the floor and walls. I could see a row of butcher knives hanging nearby, their edges stained with the same red liquid. As I shined my flashlight around the room, I froze, There were dead animals, cats, small dogs, hanging from meat hooks along the back wall. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized that this man wasn't just strange, he was dangerous. But it got worse. On the back wall, I noticed strange symbols painted in red. At first, I thought it was just red paint, but when I looked closer, I realized it was blood. It wasn't just a random mess, it was intentional. The man was involved in some sort of dark ritual, sacrificing these poor animals as part of some twisted ritual. And to make matters worse, this man was our neighbor. I couldn't stay any longer. I quickly backed out of the shed, trying not to make a sound. Just as I was slipping out of the yard, I heard footsteps approaching. I scrambled to the gap in the fence, desperately trying to close it behind me without being noticed. Once I was safely back inside my house, I locked all the doors and grabbed my phone. I called 911, my hands shaking as I dialed the number. But just as I was about to speak, I saw him. The man from next door, holding a meat cleaver in his hand, was walking toward my front door. His movements were slow, deliberate. He was wearing all black, and his eyes seemed fixated on me. I didn't know what he planned to do, but I wasn't going to wait around to find out. The operator answered, and I screamed into the phone, "There's someone with a weapon. He's breaking into the house." I quickly gave them our address, but by the time I finished, I heard the sound of the patio door smashing open. I bolted toward the front door, but the keys were in the kitchen. I had no time to grab them, so I ran out the back door and sprinted down the street. I looked back and saw the man standing in the doorway, still holding the cleaver. It felt like a nightmare. But then I saw flashing blue lights coming around the corner. The police car had arrived, and I flagged them down. They quickly entered the house, guns drawn. I explained everything to them as they rushed inside. After a few tense moments, I heard gunshots. The police had confronted the man. He had attacked one of the officers with the cleaver, and in self-defense, they had to shoot him. He died right there in front of our house. Later, the police found more than 40 animal graves in his backyard, along with strange ritual books and other evidence of his dark practices. It turned out the man had been living next to us for years, but nobody knew what he was really up to. It was a relief to know that he was no longer a threat, but the thought of what he had been doing so close to home left me shaken. I never expected to live next to someone so twisted, but sometimes the people you think you know are the ones who hide the darkest secrets.